some startup companies, one's called Life Effects, where this is late 1990s, early 2000s, where we're basically creating interactive digital models. That's actually a long time ago. And we're also trying to create realistic virtual humans. This is for film, so we did a few projects, one called The Jester and Young at Heart, which was about creating digital humans that it didn't make you think that they're an artificial character. You just went straight to, what's that person's life history? What are they thinking? So I wanted to create digital humans that you would actually just think about their inner world and not worry about the artifice of that. So all that kind of led into various things. I was in the visual effects industry for a long time, most of the time at Sony and at Weta, and that was creating digital characters. And I was looking at both how to create realistic characters. So I did work with Paul Dubevic for Spider-Man, where we were using the light stage to create Dr. Octopus and people like that. And then at Weta, I was, and during that time I'd been working also on ways to motion capture, because at Life Effects and things like that, we were going, okay, we can capture actors because we built our own HD motion capture system and very high resolution. We were really looking at, and we were working on projects with people like Jim Carrey. We're trying to turn them into a fish for a particular project. But one of the big challenges there was the amount of data that you were capturing, and how do you actually make that into something that isn't like a video playback, like you have now with 3D video. It's like you've got tons of data, but you can't manipulate it. So it was really looking at how do we make this type of technology and this data manipulatable and animatable. And so I started developing methods for, transferring motion data onto characters which were different. And that was starting to really look into, okay, what's the essence of facial expression and interaction, and how do we, it's almost like transcribing music. You've captured it from one instrument and you've got a piano, now you need to turn it into a guitar, so you have to transcribe it, and very different instruments. And so this led to building sort of facts-based systems. And so this is particularly useful for characters like King Kong, where you have a performer with one facial geometry and a character like King Kong who's actually got very different facial geometry. Like his eyebrows will roll up rather than go up. So there's all kinds of non-linearities in it. Anyway, all that led to sort of creating those sorts of models for those sorts of characters, and then we started making that into real-time systems for Avatar. So we had real-time systems where the actors on the stage of Avatar were basically driving characters. So James Cameron would be watching, the Na'vi characters live, like he was actually in a video game, but he could have had a virtual camera. And so anyway, through all this work, I really got interested in, okay, we've got actors performing these roles, but then, it's a 3-year plus process to get that to screen, and as one story. If you could have the computer characters create their own acting, act themselves, you've got infinite stories. It's completely infinite what can be done with them. And then I got I'd done work in bioengineering before, and I'd also been very interested in neuroscience and AI, all the different things that were going on, and in physiology. So I was really interested in the combination of all these things. Is how do you actually create a digital character that can actually create its own expressions and act? But of course, that's a big rabbit hole. You basically end up having to make a digital brain. And so that sort of, after I sort of, thought about this, I realized I can't go back. This is too exciting. So I sort of left the visual effects industry and started a lab, which then spun out into a company, Soul Machines. And, along the course of that game, we started making the very first fully autonomous character, which was Baby X, which was a digital baby that you could sort of, learn and interact with and do all these types of things as a sort of almost like a blank slate. So that's a very short version of the story about, and then of course now Soul Machines and the metaverse coming around, it's like, how do you create autonomous digital characters for the metaverse? Because we're going to be interacting with all kinds of things, and not everything is going to be driven by a live human. For example, if a business wants to scale, you don't want to have every single avatar on there necessarily driven by a human, because it's impossible to scale. Whereas that's where digital, like autonomous digital characters, start allowing that to be a possibility. And then there's games and entertainment where if you actually have characters that can actually think for themselves and do different things, that's infinite. Like all the types of incredible crazy games and interactions we'll be able to make will be just so fascinating. And every time you play the game, you're going to have a different experience. And so I think that's all so exciting. So that's basically a compressed version.
Dr. Cesium, really, really amazing journey and really high-tech work you've been doing. And, as we bring 3D to everyone, I think, operating at this scale and this realism is going to be super important.